Not like this. Not like this. Oh my goodness. It is Friday, ladies and gentlemen. Just barely Friday, but it is still Friday. What is up, everybody? This is Jay, aka MultimediaJay, at the end of a long work week with a lot of stuff going on. And I'm heading into yet another weekend where I might not actually get to have a weekend, because I have some very important business-related phone calls to make tomorrow. And by tomorrow, I mean night shift tomorrow. So do this stream, relax, do some video stuff with the next video that I want to put together, which is also, this is going to become a spin-off video, by the way. I'm not going to wait for YouTube to do its extended stream processing with this, because I want this to knock the video about brushing your teeth in the shower out of the #1 parking spot, but I want the stream to be before the next Wacky World of Multimedia J video, because I'm actually thinking taking a break from YouTube, letting that video just sit in the #1 parking spot for perhaps days and stuff. Because what I'm working on right now is a video that really establishes a new baseline for what I want to do with these around the house videos and things like that, and what I want to do with videos in general. Now, I've been doing, quick one-off things here and there for as long as I've been doing main series and stuff like that, but I don't even really think about the whole main series thing anymore, because is something really a main series just because it's a longer video? If that's the case, then streams are the mainest of the main series of all. Just the logic doesn't really go through. So it's an I'm just exhausted after this work week, and it's not over yet. So I have to kind of cross over into daytime territory and make some calls on day shift Friday. See if anybody will pick up the phone related to some businessy type stuff that's going on locally in the offline world. So I'm just here to chill, talk about a few things, some heavier than others, mostly this Texas situation though, and clear the air with stuff that I need to clear the air with. Because this past week on Twitter, I've had more than enough opportunities to come across to people as an insensitive clod and a total jerk about the situation in Texas with the freak snowstorm, the polar vortex, aka climate change stuff, messing with the state of Texas and bringing some New England weather that far south. I've seen these before, by the way, because I have cousins in Florida, and they complain when they get snow because one of these things dips all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico further to the east, and Florida gets winter weather, and Florida gets cold Canadian air. And so Florida gets snow, and unlike a lot of times when you hear people in Florida talk about snow, it's not all melted by lunchtime. Legit winter weather. Of course, nothing's built for any of this stuff over there, but hey, if the world's really going to become like this, where a lack of Arctic sea ice leads to the wobbliest jet streams we've seen in decades, because the sea ice is really low over the span of decades, maybe it's time to update the building codes and introduce the warmer parts of the world to bits and pieces of colder weather once in a while as the world continues to change. So we got to talk about this Texas situation. Before we do that, though, let's talk about this Barry situation. Who the heck is Barry? Barry is a KIRL streamer that I don't watch. She was banned off of Twitch because of a domestic incident involving her and her family, and police are involved. And of course, when you're a content creator and you have something this bad happen, instantly everybody's trying to pry their nose into it. Because people who watch content creators, whether they're YouTubers, streamers, what have you, they like to pretend they actually know the person that they're watching. The truth of the matter is, it's the internet. These people are strangers, and parasocial relationships are absurdly one-sided. The only way you have any real friends in these kinds of spaces is if you get involved in collabs, maybe Discord, or some kind of thing to break that barrier of everything always being one way. And the only way that happens is if the other person wants to do the same thing. And there's a lot of big content creators out there, quite frankly, that don't, because they've gotten big enough to where they can't really trust anybody. Cold ones at the ready. We are going to need them big time with these two serious discussions here. So there was an incident that got her probably indefinitely suspended off of Twitch, where it was horrible stuff. Guy turned on her stream, did a lot of TOS stuff that gets you indefinitely suspended. It was horrible. And when I took the on-the-fly Google Translator to translate all the Korean, what I was able to make out was it's a very serious domestic situation. So when you have stuff like this and the police get involved, there's a process they follow. So there will be times when nobody is saying anything. There's going to be times when nobody is saying anything at all, because that's the procedure. You'll see this too, by the way, if you jump on social media and you follow local news and you see local news outlets like maybe a radio station or a local free paper or whatnot doing stories about things the police are doing, you'll see again and again that there are times when names are not released to the public and details are not released to the public because of ongoing investigations. So I posted on Twitter, I said, look, don't forget, these content creators you love watching are people too. They're going to have problems just like people, and they're going to have situations like this just like people, and you're going to have to give them their space just like people. So this situation, it was really bad. Probably some of the worst stuff I've seen on YouTube or Twitch. And quite frankly, the people passing it around the internet are wrong to do so. The people that are representing the Streisand force, so to speak, Streisanding this stuff all across the internet are wrong to do so. Just because you watch somebody who is entertaining you with a persona, or maybe they're even acting out a fictional character, does not mean that they're not still a person. So if something comes up with them, respect them enough to treat them the way you would somebody else who had something come up. Be cordial about it. Let the situation work itself out. And let them decide whether or not the need to know information is something you really need to know. Because many times you don't. And I'll tell you one thing. Everybody has problems in this world. That's one of the reasons why it's not a good idea to come sad fishing on social media or YouTube or whatever to try and get people to sympathize with you, because you'll get some people that'll do that. But fundamentally, if you spend your entire life worrying about other people's problems, you're never going to run out of stuff to worry about. So do you really want to worry the rest of your life? Do you want to be upset the rest of your life? Do you want to be like the rest of your life because you're such a magnet to other people's problems? Let people sort things out. That respect them as people. So there's a lot of things I can talk about when it comes to this situation with her. We could talk about the way she conducts herself on stream. We can talk about Asian culture and the pressure it puts on men, especially when it comes to traditional gender roles and stuff, to really provide for their families. We can talk about all kinds of stuff, and none of it will be in any way, none of it will get us anywhere. So this situation, like I said on Twitter, is a harsh reminder. You do not know these people you're watching when the cameras aren't rolling. You only know what they are deciding to do to show you on camera. That's why there's, things like paparazzis and stuff are such a huge thing, because it kind of breaks this whole cycle. I mean, when you start getting involved with what celebrities do, now you're talking about like every picture of them needs to be photoshopped to make them look a certain way because of the image they're trying to project. So it gets even wilder when you start talking about, say, Hollywood or something like that. So, bottom line, yeah, I don't watch Barry. The only reason I know anything about her is because the KIRLs do collabs with her. When she got partnered and she paywalled the heck out of everything, I was like, nope. Yeah, there's some other things too. There's a lot of good-looking people on Twitch. I know that. It's photogenic media. It's visual media. This is video streaming we're talking about, and Twitch uniquely versus YouTube has an emphasis on younger demographics. So half the audience 18 to 34 years old and 20% roughly teenagers. Twitch skews younger than YouTube. It's right in their own marketing material they use to attract advertisers. So there's going to be good-looking young people on there. And it's not going to be anything special. There's going to be a lot of people that are what's called photogenic, that are streaming their little hearts out. So you got to move past the step of, oh, look, somebody's good-looking on Twitch. And you got to be like, what are they doing? What kind of person are they? If somebody's good-looking, but their personality is kind of blah, They lose, as far as I'm concerned, to the person who's good looking with a better personality. And the person that's good looking, that just sits around blabbering to people all day like some old-fashioned vlog, as far as I'm concerned, they lose to the people that actually get off of their seat and do stuff. You know, IRL may be a deprecated category on Twitch that's now an umbrella term used to describe non-gaming streaming in some ways here and there. It may be the sort of thing that wasn't such a good idea to really popularize a couple of years ago. But the live stream equivalent of the stuff I do, I think has a future. It's interesting and it's fun to watch. You know, at the end of her stream today, Ginny actually was tinkering with her computer. That's why I featured her on my Twitch channel. I just hit host and hey, look, she's tinkering with the computer. I might even watch the VOD for crying out loud. And I don't watch a lot of Twitch VODs. Or I'll go to her, VOD channel on YouTube. I'll queue that up and catch the computer experiment part of it as well, or catch the highlights or something like that. But this sort of thing where, it's not just about looking pretty on camera. Because if you have a lot of people that look pretty on camera, looking pretty on camera is just, So if you're somebody who looks pretty on camera and you attract a certain kind of audience, and then you treat that audience a certain way, and then you paywall the living daylights out of everything, yeah, there's plenty of other people that could be watching. So this is somebody I don't even follow, and this is somebody I don't even follow. I only know because I follow other people who do collabs with her and are considered friends or whatever in that clique. But this situation with her is awful. Let the family work that out. Let the police work that out. Don't bother with it. There's much better things to give your attention to on the internet that'll actually make you feel a lot better than someone else's problems. Just the way it is sometimes. All right, let's talk about Texas. Holy crap, Texas, what are we going to do? I've had plenty of opportunities to... Let's start with... let's just fire this up. First off, while we fire the music up, let's check out this new sub here. Planecaster, thank you for the sub on YouTube. Now let's talk about this Texas thing. So Texas had... The grid, does it really have to be the first of the first here? Just modify a few things. What? Now I can't hear anything, so I modified things too much. Ear trumpet. Good, okay, so Winamp is still at 10%. That's pretty much what I'm looking for here. So Texas, look, they had a freak snowstorm. Climate change is a thing in our world, unfortunately. Arctic sea ice is really low. One of the things that's tied to when that happens is the jet stream gets wobblier. Here in New England, I'm very familiar with a screwball jet stream because we've had those polar vortex condensed winters, as I call them, where February is basically all cold snaps and snowstorms for about 45 days. We actually have one right now. We have a snowstorm going on right now in Connecticut that fizzled. It was supposed to be like 4 to 8 inches, long duration storm, and now it's down to 1 to 3 inches. Woo! Over the same time period. So it's going to be basically a snow globe type event. It's going to look nice outside. I'm tempted to take the fat bike out. So I've got a lot of important phone calls to make for night shift tomorrow, aka Friday during the day, today later on. I want to take... Maybe I might take the fat bike out, though. This is exactly the kind of light snow weather that it's kind of made for. Unless the roads are nothing but water and salt, in which case, why do I want to corrode my bike with the stuff we throw on the roads? So, been trying to find some snowy weather to ride the fat bike around, because that's kind of what it's for. But we never really have a small amount of snow. We have... either, everything's down to tar like that easily, or we have like 12 inches. So it's just, man. So yeah, there's a lot of screwy stuff that's going on. If you look at Arctic sea ice, it's at record lows over the span of decades, and the oceans and the ice at the polar ice caps helps to regulate things and control other weather-related things such as the jet stream and stuff like that. So the polar vortexes where Connecticut has had colder temperatures than Alaska and stuff like that, that's a wobbly jet stream where this huge Canadian air mass just right over New England. A couple of years ago, we had one dip down into Florida instead of Texas, and my Florida relatives were complaining like crazy on social media. You're talking about Florida here. People don't go to Florida to get snow. They go to Florida to get away from snow. They go to Florida to get away from snow. And so when you go down to Florida and you get snow, what the heck did I come down here for? Plus, stuff's not built for snow because normally there isn't snow in Florida. But, you know, we had the incident, we've had the screwball things here in New England where our winter has been more obnoxious than it usually is. And New England winter can be pretty obnoxious. So, we've had screwball stuff in New England. We've had a dip in the jet stream mess with Florida and Georgia and cause things like the Atlanta snowstorm, infamous Atlanta snowstorm, and other stuff like that. And now we have one that dips down into Texas. And hey, what do you know? Texas, I know Texas is right-wing. I know there's a lot of Republican influence in Texas. And Texas historically has been about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. The old cowboy attitude about things, you know, we can be independent. Heck, Texas was its own republic before it became a U.S. state. Texas is about being a badass, wearing a big old hat, and just being a total badass with everything you do. Drive a big truck, carve out your place in the world, get on out there and get stuff done. And sometimes I think, though, that Texas kind of goes a little overboard with some of this rugged individualist stuff. When I found out that Texas has its own power grid separate from the entire rest of the country, I was like, what on? Oh, man, this is just... So among some of the things I've mentioned here, there's a lot of stuff that reminds me of stuff I've seen before. For example, the situation with Enron in California in the early 2000s with the rolling blackouts, the deregulation of the energy grid, all this other stuff. And I'm like, this happened like about 20 years ago. I remember when it was on the news that there were blackouts in California. It's like, how is California not able to keep the lights on? I remember seeing that kind of stuff. And now I see it happening again, this time in Texas. And where was Enron based in? Texas. Just crazy, you know? Look, these ideas, I've been making fun of them and satirizing them, but in reality, there's a lot of people that have gone through a lot of crap this week. And, you know, these people do need to be helped. If need be, they need to be helped to move out of that darn state if the leadership is going to continue doing this kind of stuff. Look, hey, Texas leadership, your citizens are not guinea pigs for this rhetoric you have in your head about the way you'd like America to be. If you can't provide the basics of Western civilization in a freaking snowstorm, then you deserve to have a mass population exodus to other states that have that have their ducks more in a row, including other southern states. But I certainly threw more than enough satire around to get Texas people to hate me on Twitter. The truth is, though, I'm pretty familiar with some of these ideas. It boils down to a little something called minarchism, limited government, and government that's as limited as possible to keep people's taxes down. This is the sort of stuff that was popular among the conservative stuff I read when I was in college. Now, keep in mind, I've always been the kind of person that wanted to make my own decisions on what I believe and why I believe it. So when I have people patronizing the living daylights out of me, that is something that I don't like. So when I went off to college and I had all these hard left college professors who were from the Vietnam generation that protested Vietnam during the 60s, I think older boomers and whatnot. So, older baby boomers and what have you, when I had professors that were like that and trying to patronize me into being hard left, and I wasn't given, you know, the materials and the space, so to speak, to make that decision on my own, I was like, heck with that, I'm going completely in the other direction. I was listening to Rush Limbaugh. I was listening to conservative talk shows, Michael Savage and the Savage Nation. I was reading Ann Coulter books. I read books by Larry Elder. You know, I was a regular on townhall.com. And quite frankly, the idea of government not spending more money than it should appealed to me. Because, I mean, people had to be responsible. Why couldn't Washington be responsible and not spend us into oblivion? So these ideas that built the lackluster power grid and the deregulated mess that we are now seeing thrown around Twitter, these are ideas I'm not completely unfamiliar with. Truth is, though, when you grow up a little, and you stop being so full of yourself, as young people and especially teenagers are known for having baked-in narcissism in their adolescence, you start realizing human civilization is what it is, not just because of stuff that you did. It's not always because of you. You can be hardworking, you can be great at what you do, but you're still just one person. There's somebody else out there who is part of the reason why you're enjoying the kind of life that you have right now. And one of those people that I often mention is the people that work at power plants. I wouldn't know. I've tinkered with computers, I've tinkered with AV equipment, I've made myself sound like a radio guy. I wouldn't be able to tell you how to run the controls that run a natural gas plant or a nuclear plant or even a wind farm. That's somebody else's expertise. And that is one of the foundations of human civilization. We're not going to be able to do everything. We can entrust others who are better at things than we are to do things right and hold them accountable if they don't perform. That's where we're at. So, you can say it's Northeast culture that I have growing up in New England. I have an emphasis on formal education because, quite frankly, I like not being surrounded by morons. You know, I have an emphasis on formal education, and if there's a way for something that's a public program to do something well, I will give it a chance to do something well and not instantly hate it because it's big government. There are things that the public sector is good at, and there are things that the private sector is good at. Private sector is good at all the things that libertarians like to brag about: innovation, entrepreneurialism, building businesses, the works. Public sector is good at a very different skill set of things, and that is minimum standards for things. If we decide that we want living in America or Western civilization or the 2020s, whatever, to have some basic standards of living, that's where you would get the public sector and the government involved. Public education system. There's probably ways to learn more when you're in grades K through 12, but you're going to learn something that you can do something with if you apply yourself in those public schools. Public transportation isn't as good as having your own car, and the demographic reports show that there are situations where you have to be rich to be poor if you don't have a car in this country. And you're taking cabs, buses, trains, and other forms of public transportation everywhere you go. But there's a way to have things like cabs, buses, trains, and now, of course, we have Ubers and stuff like that. But Uber's not really public transportation. Similar effect, though. If you can call an Uber instead of calling a cab, maybe we should restrict to just buses and trains and subways and stuff. The bottom line is, some of the things like subways in cities took, fighting traffic for a much longer period of time and turned it into a 10-minute underground train ride. And our subway system's been doing that for over a century now. There's a video that that the algorithms on YouTube have been passing me around that's about the early 1900s, like 1900s, 1910s. And it's fascinating to be here in the 2020s and remember back to the 80s and think that even if, take any decade that you've lived in when you're my age, go back to the 1900s or 1910s, you might be a fish out of water because things were just that different at the beginning of the 20th century. The 20th century was defined by a ton of advancements, including in the English language. Words we had to add to describe all the amazing stuff that we developed during that century. So, either way, I do believe that it is possible for public stuff to establish minimum standards for things, and that's one of the key reasons why I support the idea of Title II regulation on broadband. We're at the point right now where broadband's no longer a nice to have. We just call it internet. We don't even specify broadband anymore. We just call it internet. Does my phone have internet, or does my phone have Wi-Fi, or whatever? We're talking about broadband internet service, whether it's a terrestrial connection to your home or whether it's a mobile connection to your smartphone. But we're at the point now where so much stuff is online that we definitely need to have some minimum standard of what it means to connect and give connectivity to people, much in the same way that we wired up the country for electricity after a certain period of time when electrical service, besides a lone light bulb hanging from a wire coming down from your ceiling, how, electricity once upon a time was this wonderful thing only found in the cities or places where you could actually make profit off of it, because that's the only way outside of, hey, let's give it to everybody, that these things are going to advance. broadband is in the same situation. So these ideas I'm tossing around, obviously, as an experienced tech enthusiast and whatnot, are things I've grown to appreciate from my naive, freshly graduated college hotshot days, where I actually agreed mostly with the Constitution Party on things and limiting the living daylights out of government to the point of making it incompetent at what it does. So, bottom line, though, is, and here's another thing that some commentators might tell you to do if you listen to enough political shows. They may tell you that instead of waiting for mommy government to tell you what to do, they'll say, just vote with your feet. So I recommend anybody who can't stand Texas because of this nonsense, get out of Texas. You know, AOC was actually talking about, let's do some kind of charity event. Let's do some kind of charity event for people in Texas. What should we do for them? And I jokingly replied on Twitter, help them leave the state. If you don't want to put up with the experiment going on there needs to be alternatives, and it needs to be possible for people to leave the state and move to other states where different things are done differently. Just like here in New England, we have in New Hampshire, the Free State Project. People who want the kind of limited government, limited regulation, things like that. There's a Free State Project, very libertarian focused in the state of New Hampshire. If you don't like Massachusetts or Connecticut or Rhode Island, you can go to New Hampshire. And if you don't like what New Hampshire's doing, you can move to another state. See, that's the beauty of the United States. The states are all experimenting with various things, so you pick what state you want to live in based on what you're willing to deal with here. There are some things I like that Connecticut does that Massachusetts may not be so good at. Like for example, in Massachusetts, you might, depending on what part of the state you live in, be prone to tornadoes or wackier snowstorms, or there are situations where Connecticut gets rain in the winter while Massachusetts gets snow and ice. It can happen. It's part of New England winter. So it's all about agency, really, and how we live our lives and where we choose to live. I mean, if you don't like where you are, there's plenty of other places you could go, but that's going to have consequences. Just like the people that brag on social media about they don't like Connecticut and the left-leaning stuff we have in this state, the higher taxes and the higher regulation, so they move to North Carolina or something, until North Carolina gives them something to complain about, and then what? Oh yeah, I remember about 10 years ago, Snowmageddon 2011, we got a ton of snow in Connecticut, and I was seriously thinking about moving to North Carolina, because it was really popular for people from New England to move to that part of the South. So, Cary, North Carolina, in the Raleigh-Durham area. I think I have a cousin who's in that area now. Cary, North Carolina was jokingly called the containment area for relocated Yankees among the locals in North Carolina. But, there's a couple of things since then that North Carolina has done regarding broadband specifically that I'm not a fan of. So, yeah, I would have gotten away from the snow, but I would have gotten into different attitudes towards whether or not broadband should be a publicly available service. So, I want to stay pro-tech and pro-technology without ending up in California. So, New England it is. Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. Maybe New York if I really wanted to. Maybe New York if I really wanted to. Although it is interesting, though, to see on Twitter the old Enron zombies resurfacing, where during a period of rolling blackouts, highly deregulated energy and whatnot, there were massive spikes in the cost of your electricity. There's people in Connecticut complaining about that with Eversource. There was an issue with the distribution fees versus the generation fees a couple of months ago, but Connecticut PURA got on that, Public Utility Regulatory Agency. There was a lot of back and forth, and that got backed off on. Like, why are you trying to raise rates during the pandemic when many people are out of work and stuff like that? So, we'll see what the governor of Texas does about this whole thing. The thing is, though, much of what's going on in Texas is stuff I've seen before. The idea is that the way that the Texas energy grid wound up and its inability to handle a sharp change in weather is something I've seen before. This is the kind of rhetoric that I used to be all wrapped up in back when I was in college and shortly thereafter. But you grow up, you mature a bit, you realize life's not completely about you, and you actually start appreciating the contributions of others and the whole we're in this together type thing, because that's really what human civilization is all about. It's what democracy is all about. We're all in this together. How are we going to get along and make things happen, even if we disagree with people? Really basic stuff here. But it's the world we find ourselves in. So I'd say at this point, though, you talk about climate change. Oh, no, let's deny it. Oh, really? Well, we've had freak snowstorms and freak dips in the jet stream go all the way down to Texas this time. It was Florida before. Sometimes New England gets caught in the mess, where New England becomes like Minnesota. And we get, temperatures that are so cold so consistently that we have ice crystal weather. We have ice crystals for weather. We have glass breaking in our houses. And it's cold enough where you think it's Connecticut, but you want to put a block heater on your car like it's Minnesota or something. These things are the sort of things I guess we got to get used to until things settle down. Some things didn't used to happen before. Now they're happening. So what's Texas going to do? So is there going to be some kind of maybe minimum set of insulation or something like that for the folks in Texas in case something like this happens again? So you don't have a situation where the power's out, the water's out, the pipes are breaking, your apartment's getting flooded. Is what's going to happen as a result of all of this? Because I'll tell you, in other parts of the country, bad things happen, things change. Even southern states. Take Florida, for example. Hurricane Andrew got people to revisit the building codes. I believe Hurricane Harvey, did that do the same thing in Texas? Or any of the other major situations with hurricanes? How are we going to move forward from this? Are we going to look like we're moving forward when in reality we're not? Same old rhetoric over reality, feelings over facts, and nobody gets anywhere. This is stuff that we all got to think about. And if the folks in charge don't want to reconsider the consequence, or even take responsibility for the consequences of their actions and the systems they've built, and you can't vote them out, why not consider moving somewhere somehow where you won't have to deal with this nonsense anymore? This is America. You don't need travel papers to go from state to state like they joked about in the Red October movie. You don't need that kind of stuff. Go to where you want to go. Go where you fit in. That's America. And that's why I'm going to stay put. Because when I'm seeing people on Twitter posting $5,000 electricity bills because they happen to use power at a time when the price that doesn't really have a lot of control on it went through the roof because of some kind of shortage. I think people say Connecticut's expensive, but I used half the power of the guy with the $5,000 bill and had like $100 or something for the month. Sometimes you got to get past other people's rhetoric and just look at, reality, numbers, visibility, and the way things really are, not the way people tell you that they are. I don't know. I think there's more expensive places I could be living than Connecticut. Whether it's because of something the government does, or because of something landlords do, or because of something the private sector does, I don't know. I certainly know what all the talking heads are saying. I know what all the people that want to twist my arm in all different directions are saying. Know about all that. But is it really the way things are, or is it just what people are telling me? So, either way, for the people that actually want to stay in Texas, I'll just say this. Make some friends in snowier parts of the country, and then jump on Amazon and look at things like, for example, a blanket for your water heater, wraparounds for your pipes, even if you don't think you'll need them. See what the cost is. Things along those lines. See what the cost is. Because remember, if you live in a part of the country where you can't get this stuff from your local Walmart because they don't think they'll ever want to sell it, buy it online. You know, how about maybe a snow brush and an ice scraper? Maybe it'll rattle in your trunk for a year or two before you actually need it again, but you'll have it. Maybe tire socks for better snow traction, like auto socks or something like that, or something that temporarily improves your traction if you get surprise snow that you don't normally get. Like tire ties or tire socks or something. Learn about, what it's like in snow, or how about winter blend windshield washer stuff? That's something people aren't talking about. What if people had summer blend stuff in their car and maybe, it didn't handle going down to 20 degrees very well? I wonder, that hasn't been in the news. I wonder if that's maybe the sort of thing that slipped under the radar. I'm hearing about pipes bursting. How about damage to cars? How about, a different blend of gasoline in the South? Maybe, cars weren't running as well, or maybe diesel. Summer fuel year round. There is no winter fuel in Texas normally because you don't need it. I'm curious if there might be something like that going on. Truth is, though, if you want to stay in Texas and you have leaders that want to pretend that the world's climate isn't going wacko from time to time because of CO2 emissions and things like that, you don't have to not be able to prepare because of that. If you can't get the stuff locally, like jump on Amazon or something. I think many of the supplies that I keep around for winter, you could probably have, delivered from somewhere. Maybe it'll go, maybe UPS will send it out from Indiana or something, but it's not totally an option that isn't available for anybody that wants to actually stay in Texas after all of this. But I think, if there's a bunch of people that are content on things like, the separate power grid and things like that, and they just have to have that because it makes them feel all independent and manly or whatever, it might be time to get out of Texas. Even if it means going to Oklahoma or something, just somewhere where you don't have this that isn't prone to this kind of garbage. So, as like I said, like I've talked about earlier, Texas is not alone in terms of freak weather that is weather you normally don't guess. We've had that in Connecticut, we've had that in New England, and it's been that way in other parts of the country as well. But if you have leadership that wants to be like, business as usual after we pretend we're doing something about it, don't sit around waiting for people who aren't going to take action to take action. Take action. And if you don't want to get out of the state, realize we live in this wonderful world with the internet and stuff. And there are things like winterization supplies, weather stripping, even thicker curtains. One of the things I'm experimenting with this winter is comparing the average temperature to whether or not I want to use those plastic window kits that you put on your windows, because I have thicker curtains. I have enough thick curtains that it's like putting a blanket over the window if I put two of them. That's why you see, for example, you see these curtains right here, they go up, but there's also one of those curtain rods over the top. That's because there's a second thing of curtains that is sitting on top of the thing that holds the curtains. So I'm actually creating something that's kind of like a blanket over the window. But I've seen some of these pictures from people freezing in their houses in Texas, understandably, because the houses weren't built for this kind of stuff, and I see zero curtains on the windows. It's like, hey, put something on there that acts like a blanket. Glass is not very good, in terms of insulation. Now, maybe there isn't insulation in the walls or anything like that, but the question is always, what can you do? You may not be able to do this, you may not be able to do that, you may not be able to do the other, but what can you do? And I just say, hey, if you think Texas is terrible after all this, get out of Texas. But if you don't want to, you're not without options. And if you have store chains and local retailers and whatnot, and you have these businesses that want to pretend that this kind of stuff doesn't happen, override them thanks to the wonderful technology of the internet. Same thing to do with tires, Maybe instead of summer tires, go all season or something, or look for something with horizontal treads on it. I know there's a lot of fuel economy tires out there that only have vertical treads to try and reduce rolling resistance. They're like bicycle tires, but big enough for cars. So that's something I always looked for after getting burned with a pair of those on the last car that I had. Oh, the ones the dealership put on there. Oh, I'll give you 4 new tires as part of this deal. Yeah. Day one in the snow, and I almost couldn't even drive. Yeah, I couldn't get going in the snow on a flat surface because they were almost like big rig tires. The treads were almost all vertical. Horrible. Nothing to really, move the snow around or anything like that. They were fuel economy tires that were not made for any kind of all season or any kind of weather. So I'd say at this point, though, considering we've had these regular dips in the jet stream for a couple of years now, let's just assume at this point that they're going to become a regular thing, and it's just a kind of not like a roulette wheel or whatnot, but a roll of the dice, Texas style, of course, as to which state is going to have the bizarrely unusual weather this winter. Maybe it'll be Florida, maybe it'll be Georgia, maybe it'll be Mississippi, maybe it'll be Louisiana, maybe it'll be Texas, maybe it'll be Arizona. Well, Arizona's deserts, that's a different story. But maybe it'll be California, who knows? But if this stuff can happen, you gotta keep it in the back of your mind. So anyways, best of luck to the National Guard and all the people bringing aid to Texas, but you really have to look at the root cause of all of this and the underlying philosophy that led to the wimpy doodle power grid that couldn't handle a little dip in the temperatures. The natural gas plants that had lots of problems and things like that. I'm not going to knock on natural gas or be like, oh yeah, Green New Deal or anything, but it's just the sort of thing where people are like, oh, well, this can never happen here. Oh, look, it did. We can't have weather that cold in Texas. Oh, wait a minute. So, I'll let social media continue doing its thing. But best of luck to the folks in Texas, especially the people that didn't like any of this stuff before all this happened and probably figured something was getting ready to happen. Well, here we are. So, but if you've got leadership that won't do the right thing yourself. If it means leaving the state, cool. Otherwise, learn a few things from people that live in snowier parts of the country and see what kind of options you have, because at this point, I think there's been enough wacky stuff in the winter on a regular basis in various parts of the country that we all need to be prepared for something that we're not used to. That includes New England too. Like when I talked about weather that was so cold, you wondered if you should have a block heater in your car. So that would be, of course, the extended cold snap a few years ago where it was 5 degrees for days. We don't normally get that around here. That's where you saw the diamond dust and windows breaking and things along those lines. So, I mean, we get it too. And I think everybody should be prepared for it, because you never know with the way things are these days. Here's to hoping things get better. I mean, 2021's not exactly off to the best start now, is it? But hey, the way 2020 was, one of those look up, see the bottom type things. So, okay, what's next? YouTube channel, we're going to bring videos back into the forefront. After this discussion, we'll do a mix of videos and streams, but the next major thing I want to do is a video. And I wanted to have some time in the limelight for a while. Over on Twitch, twitch.tv/MultimediaJay. Because of what's going on with Twitch most recently, I think the channel should be low-key, chilling, gaming, kind of a lounge-like environment. I'm ditching my plans for a ton of multi-platform support. I do have Streambeats, which is what we're listening to for Synthwave. I do have Streambeats, which is multi-platform in terms of the licensing side of it. But instead of making stuff that can go over and be an upload on Twitch, in addition to an upload on YouTube, I'm just going to have more options available for music that don't involve things like what NCS requires for that sort of stuff. But on Twitch, I think the Twitch channel should not resemble the YouTube channel at this point. There should be tiebacks to the YouTube channel for people to come over here and check out the YouTube channel. But Twitch hasn't impressed me to the point where I really want to try building it up. I think I just want to chill, play some games over there, and just do like game streaming that seems like it's something different than what I do on this channel. I'll have something that ties back to the YouTube channel from there, and I'll mention Twitch as well. There are some games actually that are better played on Twitch, because Twitch and YouTube approach video games in fundamentally different ways. I recently noticed a discussion that talked about how video game content is treated like video content in terms of whether or not something gets demonetized. So that's not the case on Twitch. With Twitch, the game's the game. Whatever's in the game is in the game. I've even seen stuff in the in a video game that is TOS if it's done in the stream part of it, where nothing happens to the streamer because it's part of the game. Twitch instead has a banned games list that you're not supposed to stream on the platform. But with all the stuff they're doing, all the wrong trees they're barking up, and all the ridiculous bans I've seen them handing out recently, with all of that that's going on, I don't think anybody should be in any way audacious on Twitch. Just do basic bread and butter game streaming. Sidecar. That's really it. I mean, play some ESO or whatever, then bring the stream over to YouTube afterwards, something like that, after the cooldown period. But by and large, the plans I had for multi-platforming everything at the start of the year, Twitch just doesn't deserve any of that stuff. Not from a tech perspective, not from a platform perspective. There's a lot I want to do. Question is, when will we get the time to do it? Either way, there's other things I need to get going on, so we shall get to that. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by.